So speaking of Technisys and Galileo, we didn't get a chance to talk about it on our inaugural episode, so I want to take a section of this pod to kind of talk about what our thoughts are. One of the bull cases, obviously, of SoFi, outside of it replacing legacy banks, is it being the back-end infrastructure for the next 1,000, 10,000 fintechs that are start, just like Amazon is the back-end infrastructure for like hundreds of thousands of companies and governments today when it comes to cloud computed storage. So let's do this for those who are new to the podcast and for those who already kind of know about it. Can someone give a top line level breakdown, like if you're explaining to a third grader why Galileo, why we bought Galileo for 1.2 billion and what it actually is going to be able to do for SoFi?
Galileo or Technisys?
I guess they do two different things.
Yeah, so both. Why do we both make those acquisitions?
Okay, I can take this. So Galileo is practically a payment processor. They play a role in the whole payment network, and they sort of allow companies that need more data or payment cards like debit cards or credit cards, well, secured credit cards, to be able to offer those to their clients. So this is called payment cards as a service APIs. They also give embedded finance opportunities to different companies for their online opportunities. And it's sort of a completely different company than SoFi, right? They're not offering banking solutions or anything like this for SoFi. They're offering it to other institutions. So this is why the term AWS of fintech has been passed around by the likes of Anthony Noto or Chamath, is that the similar way that Amazon did it where they had a customer-facing company and then an enterprise-facing company with Amazon Shopping versus Amazon Web Services. This is the same thing as what SoFi is doing with Galileo and Technisys and SoFi.com or their app. Technisys, on the other hand, is a banking platform where they actually help design websites and the actual core processes for banks. Like every bank needs their core processes and then their ledgers. Core process is practically the outline of the actual banking, how it's set up for the bank. And then the ledgers, like, make sure that the zeros and ones align so then no numbers get out of place.
So maybe I can also just tack on the second part of that question. What is the long-term sort of bull case? Because I actually, this is fresh on my mind because I talked about it earlier this week, where this entire paradigm of the payment card as a service API, it's making it plug and play for many companies to have fintech offerings that are powered by Galileo. Okay, so for example, Riley on Twitter just reminded everyone of a Samsung partnership. Samsung is not a financial services company. They're not a bank. They're not. And so they basically use Galileo or to be powered by SoFi for them to offer their own credit card. And their own credit card then has benefits for Samsung products into that ecosystem. And so the long-term bull case, and a lot of execution risk in this and very long-term out. But the reason why this AWS of finance paradigm exists and why it's really the entire paradigm shift for SoFi is because it can change the entire landscape, where today you're competing on a front, sort of like a front end, bank versus bank, or one provider versus another provider. For example, if I want to get a credit card, I could go to the SoFi credit card, or I could get the Samsung credit card. However, the benefit of providing this all out of the box, this payment card as a service API, is Galileo will get a cut essentially for, sorry, I'm getting echo from somebody.
It could be me. Is it me?
Yeah, just put yourself on mute.
Galileo will get a cut from every sort of transaction for that client, right? Because it's a B2B offering. And so you can imagine a world, I mean, the analogy that I used in my video was it's almost like Tesla's full self-driving. And obviously a very imperfect analogy, but just for the sake of explaining that licensing model, Tesla can compete against Ford in terms of like a one-to-one vehicle to vehicle. If I'm, as a consumer, I'm going to choose whichever one I buy. But that technology is inherently native to Tesla because they've gathered all of that data, similar to Galileo, because they have all of those APIs already built. They have that network already built to become a service provider for these financial services. And so all of these businesses now that want to create their own sort of credit cards or their own fintech offerings are inevitably going to be paying Galileo to do that because they can do it out of the box. In other words, Samsung doesn't need to build out their own payments network. They can just license the Galileo API or the Galileo's technology and then have a credit card that is powered by SOFI, and then they can also break into that offering. But this is a very powerful paradigm for SOFI later on down the line, powered by Galileo, powered by Technisys, powered by all of these back-end B2B offerings, because it's similar to that model of Amazon, right? Like you're connecting all of these different businesses with a unified backend perspective, right? That entire, like, okay, let's take bookstores and let's put them online. That's almost how Galileo is going to be seen for the banking industry. It's, I think Anthony Noto, maybe Riley, you know this better than I, but he was explaining this in a fireside chat through an analogy where he was saying, you're just driving by and just bank branch, and none of them are really connected. They're all sort of on their own infrastructure. They're all siloed. They all have to do it natively. Some of them are running super legacy stacks. And so building a cloud service or an entire unified backend for that, and then licensing out that technology to other providers to, number one, enable them to have fintech offerings, while at the same time collecting payments for all of those, that is a pretty radical idea, and something that is the reason why that is seen as a paradigm shift in the long term, of course.
And the cool thing about all this is that banks are decentivized from doing this. If you look at just culture in banks now, usually when you're on some sort of exec, like you're kind of like sworn in for like 5 years, and if you're going to be, if your time frame is just 5 years, you're not going to want to be putting a lot of like risky moves and shaking the system up while people above you are watching you very closely. One interesting thing is like when it comes to Galileo, one thing, like the reason why Samsung chose Galileo is because they didn't want to do it themselves at all. The fraud that you have to deal with, you have to build stuff from scratch, and if you mess up, your profit margins are going to be sinking. Like 2 to 3% on Samsung's level is a ton of money, and you're going to have to build this up and patch all these things. Like straight out of the box, Galileo provides this fraud detection system, and they've been doing it since 2001.
Someone in the comments said, "Is there any competitor to Galileo?" Can someone answer that?
Yeah, lots of competitors in any space. We hold no monopoly there. In fact, there are some massive competitors to Galileo. However, at least we think that we have a better product. And I can speak on that in a second. One of our biggest competitors is probably Stripe, probably about $100 billion market cap. They're a massive company. They definitely compete directly with us. But I think that we actually offer a better service. So, for example, with Galileo, that's just one thing, right? That's the service APIs for all the payment cards and everything along this lines, all the data, all the fraud protection, like Riley said. But now with Technisys, now we can go, okay, not only can we set up your payment cards, but we can set up your entire bank for you. Okay. Set up everything, offer you the payment transactions. You don't have to go to multiple different connections to have every process with a different, sort of partnership. You can be with us. We'll even offer you discounts for using multiple sets of our processes. And not only that, because SOFI is a nationally chartered bank, we can also store the money at SOFI. So if you guys don't have, a nationally chartered bank and you have cash management accounts, we can be that FDIC insured chartered license to actually hold that money for you. And that's sort of the next big play and the selling point of AWS, of fintech.
The one thing I'll piggyback onto that is with every subsequent acquisition that SOFI makes, they're further building their moat around Galileo's business. Like Galileo is a unique offering in terms of, okay, let's say it has 50 competitors, way less than that. But let's just say, for the sake of example, all of a sudden, Galileo plus Technisys, that narrows it down to 10. Galileo plus Technisys plus Pagaya narrows it down to, maybe 4. And so as SoFi continues to add more pieces to that puzzle, then they can further diversify their product offering and thereby build their moat even further on a technology platform perspective.